Hi, everybody. Welcome this evening to Human Trafficking in Our Communities. My name is Kate Lee, and I am the Executive Director of the Coalition. I'm thrilled to have you all here tonight. We'll be sharing an awful lot of resources today. This is going to be one of those learn a lot, but take a lot of action points away. So we will be sharing in the chat box some of the links to things that you can use to take this journey on with you. So I want just to make sure that you know there'll be plenty of things going on and plenty of things for you to look out for. One of the key things we'll be sharing today is our toolkit, our community awareness toolkit. We have just literally updated that for 2021 today. It is going to be live, and I will share the link at the end of today's presentation so that you can download that toolkit yourselves, and you can see what actions you could take, whether you're a professional worker, whether you are in a school, whether you are in a faith community, whether you lead a town or you're connected to towns and municipalities. There are actions and ideas for every community. So that's a very useful toolkit, as I say, updated for 2021. And you'll see all our new branding. I hope you look closely at what the branding looks like. It's very new, but it's really telling a story just in the letters we use. Even the circle that is yellow, that looks to me like a sun, is a spotlight. It's a spotlight on human trafficking. And our brand uses just three shapes, just a rectangle, a rhombus, and a circle to use to create images, to create figures, to create shapes. That is an inclusive and welcoming look. So we try to acknowledge that trafficking can happen to anyone, but everyone has a role in helping to end it and prevent it. So that's why we want our imagery to be very gender neutral. This can happen to girls and boys, and welcoming to you. Our motto is now, let's create a safer state. So you're all involved in doing that. So there will be other calls to action that you'll be hearing about. If you are somebody that likes to make a phone call, we'll be sharing how you can phone the governor to get a piece of legislation signed into law. Or if you like spreading the word on social media, we'll tell you about our human trafficking, our HT challenge that happens during the Super Bowl. But if you like games, we'll also tell you about a sports related game called Slam Dunk that is designed for youth, but anyone can play it. And that's running from today until the 31st of January. But without further ado, I'm going to stop my share and I am going to introduce you to our incredible speakers today. You actually have the privilege of getting the two co-chairs of our Speakers Bureau to give you tonight's presentation, our HT 101 training portion, prior to the conversation that we'll have after that between our survivor consultant, Gina Cavallo, and our president, Danny Papa. So I'd like to introduce LA and Susan to you. Ellie Lynch is the founder of Pearls, a nonprofit organization that provides tangible resources to families in crisis situations, mentorship and education to youth and young adults in central New Jersey. She was honored with the New Jersey Governor's Jefferson Award for Community Service in 2018 for her work in this area. LA is a member of the Coalition's Board of Trustees and co-chairs the Speakers Bureau. She's also a member of the Legislative and Healthcare Committees. Susan Panzika is the Executive Director and co-founder of Justice Network, which exists to educate, equip, and empower friends and neighbors to fight human trafficking by raising awareness and supporting organizations on the front lines. She serves on the Coalition's Board of Trustees and co-chairs the Speakers Bureau with LA. So without further ado, over to you, Susan. And Susan, you're on mute.
Kate, thank you so much. And I'm going to share my screen now. And oops. Welcome everyone to our new PowerPoint that was created as part of our rebrand. I'm so thankful that we have such a great presentation that we can share with people across our state. And so this presentation is about the issue of human trafficking, as you know. Human trafficking, as Kate said, can happen to anyone. It's a crime that's hidden in plain sight. And so by the end of tonight's presentation, I want you to know that anyone can be a victim, but everyone can make a difference. So let's define what is human trafficking. Human trafficking is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for the use through fraud, force, or coercion for the purpose of forced labor or sexual exploitation. Human trafficking is basically the ownership of one person, the control of a person by another. There are different types of human trafficking, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that tonight. The first one that is most familiar, I think, to people, especially in the United States, is the issue of sex trafficking, which involves a person that is being forced to perform commercial sex acts through force, fraud, or coercion. It could be in a venue such as a fake massage business, escort service, brothel. It could be on public city streets or in truck stops, strip clubs, hostess clubs. It happens in hotels, motels. It happens in people's homes. It happens anywhere and everywhere. Labor trafficking is another type of force, fraud, or coercion where someone has to do labor or services. It includes something called debt bondage. Debt bondage is not a term most of us are familiar with, but it can even be generational in places around the world where people inherit a debt from their family before them. And even though they may be getting paid a small amount, it's never enough to overcome the debt. And so they spend their life in servitude. It could happen in forced labor. It happens child labor. It can happen as nannies or household servants. It happens all around the world, but it is where someone is being forced to labor for someone else. The element of force, fraud, and coercion is what differentiates trafficking from other types of crimes. And it's where there's a violence or false love, promises, fake job offers, threats, maybe to the person who's being trafficked, or threats to their family. If you don't do this, I will hurt your mother or your little sister or someone else. I will hurt someone else for you. It could be debt bondage, and force, fraud, and coercion is what leads to labor or sex trafficking, which is forced farm work, other work, domestic servitude, prostitution, pornography for little or no money. The one exclusion to the requirement of force, fraud, or coercion is that of minors. Because even if minors are willing participants, by the nature of their age, they've not reached the age of accountability. So therefore, if they are willing participants, maybe they're trying to please their boyfriend, or it's what is called survival sex, meaning that they're engaging in this activity just so that they would have money to put food in their stomachs. By law, they are a victim of human trafficking if money is exchanged. And what makes that important is if they are considered a victim of human trafficking, then they are also offered services for those who have been victims of human trafficking. Money is the key factor. The driving force behind human trafficking is money. Human trafficking is the second largest and fastest growing crime globally. It is second only to drug trafficking, but it's equal in scope to arms or gun trafficking. So many times the word trafficking is confusing to people, and we'll get into that in a minute, but it's not about movement. Trafficking, if I said to you drug trafficking, you would know that it's a transaction between two or more people where drugs go from one person to the other. With human trafficking, it's a similar exchange but it's a person that's being sold, the services of the person that is being sold. And one major difference that makes human trafficking so such a fast-growing crime is that the criminals are learning that if you sell drugs once, you have to get a new supply to sell it again. Same thing with guns or arms. But if you control a human being, you can sell the services of that person over and over again, sometimes many times in a single night. So what is the difference between human trafficking and smuggling? Basically, smuggling is a movement of people. Trafficking, people can be trafficked right out of their home. Smuggling is often across borders. Smuggling can be a risk factor for trafficking, but it doesn't necessarily involve the use of force or fraud or coercion. Even though trafficking doesn't require physical movement, often traffickers will move their victims frequently to avoid detection. Where does human trafficking occur? Well, it occurs everywhere. It occurs around the world. These are some statistics about human trafficking. And I don't want to just read a bunch of statistics, but I do want to let you know that some key figures here. Around the world, 81% of the cases of human trafficking are forced labor. 81% globally is more labor trafficking than sex trafficking. It's a $150 billion business, we estimate, because everything is clandestine, we don't know exactly. And then figures can change sometimes depending on how they're collected and who's collecting them. Many, almost 75% of the victims of human trafficking are women and children. But when we look around the world, we would see that in the United States, the percentages is almost the opposite, where 70% of the cases involve sexual exploitation and 30% in the United States are forced labor. So it's almost a mirror. It's the opposite. Around the world, it's mostly forced labor, but in the United States, it's mostly sex trafficking. And I just want to go back one last thing. A big misconception in the public's eye is that victims of sex trafficking almost always are brought from overseas, promised a job here in the United States, and then they are trafficked. And that does happen. And I work with an organization that deals with foreign nationals who have been trafficked. However, our statistics show that 80% of the victims of human trafficking in the United States are US citizens. So now going from globally to the United States down to New Jersey, these are some of the figures from 2014 to 2019. And we see that in New Jersey, our cases are 80% are US citizens. We see that 90% of the New Jersey cases that were reported through Dream Free, which was the state provider of services for sex trafficking, they were our largest. They no longer are the only, they weren't the only one, but most of our statistics were from Dream Free. And now Covenant House has received a grant to take care over some of the work that Dream Free was doing. But in the lower left corner, we can see that the cases that were reported have increased dramatically from what they were just a year before. They were up 10%. Who is human trafficking? We talked about what is human trafficking. There is not one consistent face of a victim. Trafficked persons in the United States could be men or women, adults or children. They could be foreign nationals or US citizens. Victims of human trafficking in the United States, some are well educated, while others have no formal education. It is a crime that can affect anyone, regardless of race, nationality, gender, age, or socioeconomic background. While anyone can become a victim of human trafficking, though, certain populations are especially vulnerable. Minors, women, undocumented immigrants, runaway and homeless youth, oppressed, marginalized, and impoverished groups or individuals. And we're going to talk about those particular vulnerabilities in a few minutes. The important thing to remember here is anyone can be a victim of human trafficking, but everyone can help prevent it. What we're going to do now is share with you a video called Stop This Traffic. And so let me make sure that I can start the video here. So sometimes the volume is not loud. I'm hoping that we won't have a problem, but please, if you haven't seen it before, the video is about 6 minutes long. If you have seen it before, you know when I say grab a tissue, because it is, I've watched this video many times and it never fails to affect me.
You just take a seat.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming in. I'm Mary, by the way.
I'm Mary tonight.
Tonight, nice to meet you. Don't mind the giant microphone above your head.
I'll try not to.
There are 3 photos in front of you. If you could just pick one, it doesn't really matter which one it is, and show that one to us.
All right.
Could you describe her to us?
She looks youthful. I feel like this is one of those situations where if I say he's 23, then he's actually going to be 16.
Hispanic, maybe not full, but part. Similar to me, actually.
Well, I mean, she's young, so probably has a lot of things to look forward to.
I would describe him as friendly.
She looks, happy. She doesn't look shy, but confident. Anything she puts her mind to, she could achieve.
We actually have his story. You could read that out loud to us.
Okay. Marcus. I grew up really close to my parents. Adriana. I grew up with my brother and sister.
Amy. I remember watching the Olympics on TV when I was 5 and being totally in awe of the sprinters.
I was the middle child and easily the quietest.
I felt like no one ever saw me or cared.
Dad was too drunk to keep a job, and he never even saw me unless I was in his way.
Mom worked 2 jobs to make sure we had food for every meal, so she was never here to know when he would hit us.
One day when I went to the mall, like I like to do to be out of the house, a man came up to me and told me I was beautiful and asked me on a date.
On our first date, he drove me around in his car and said we could eat whatever I wanted.
Every time we were together, he bought me something new.
Tom really cared about me, and Tom really made me feel special.
I was in love with him.
After only going out for 3 weeks, Tom offered me a way out of my home, asked me to move in with him.
So when he asked me to have sex with him, I did.
He would put his hand over my face until I couldn't breathe.
Tom had friends over pretty regularly, and I could tell that some of his friends were into me.
So I kept my door locked and hoped that no one would bother me. After a few nights of crashing there, he said that I still owed him for letting me stay at his place.
He said he had a friend who wanted to spend an hour with me.
He told me I might have to do some stuff, but not to worry about it. It's not a big deal.
When I didn't want to, he slapped me and said no one ever cared about me like he did.
But I didn't know what else to do because I needed a place to stay.
His friends forced themselves on me and took turns while he watched.
One by one, they'd come down to the basement, telling me how pretty I am.
When they're on top of me, I just close my eyes and pretend I'm running.
I'm exhausted and I don't know what to do.
My name is Adriana. I'm 16 years old.
My name is Marcus. I'm 14 years old. My name is Amy. I'm 12 years old.
I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
And I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
That was very different than what I thought. Especially because, like, being a girl and imagining, like, if that was me, like, that's, I don't even know. I can't even imagine what that would be like. She deserves to be a kid, just like what she is in this picture.
It being so close to home is something that makes me want to jump out of this chair.
I wouldn't think that Grand Rapids is a place where anything like this would ever happen.
Because you don't want it to happen to anybody, and you really don't want it to happen to people that live where you live.
Thank you for sharing her story with us. I'd like to show you something if you wouldn't mind taking her picture and following me to the gym.
I expected something certainly a lot smaller.
Bar graphs and numbers, and but these are actual people.
I don't know, in like my world, in my bubble or whatever, we don't talk about this. It's not something you think about.
You know, what we see is only on the surface.
I mean, looking at this, sex trafficking doesn't have any discrimination, that's for sure. Ages, genders, can affect anybody.
It hits you right in your heart, your gut, your stomach. It's like, wow. Now it's like I feel like I have this weight of responsibility to see how I can help.
Changes through greater awareness and making people realize that this does happen here and will continue to happen until we decide to make it stop.
Well, let's just take a breath. Let's just take a moment and just kind of take that all in. My colleague Susan has laid out a great foundation where we talked about the prevalence of human trafficking from a global perspective, from a national perspective, and then we talked about it from a New Jersey perspective. And as that one of the persons in that video accurately described, she said, you know, I thought this would probably be bar graphs and statistics. And that video is so powerful because it brings those statistics to a place of home. It brings it right down to the streets that we drive on and to the areas that we populate every day. Why are we looking at Michigan? Well, Michigan almost mirrors the population of New Jersey. So when we're looking at that wall, that could happen. It is happening here in New Jersey. We have a population of 9 million. So you just think about that wall, those pictures. And, you know, as I was preparing for this presentation, I thought about that wall. And as Susan said, you know, you can't look at that video and not have a visceral response. But, you know, for a minute there, I took those pictures off the wall and I said, you know, some parents had to take those pictures off their mantle. They had to take them off their refrigerator to give it to law enforcement to find their children or their children is missing. So it is something that hopefully when you see it, that it'll stay with you and understand that this is something that is happening in our communities. Again, we talk a lot about cases. We talk a lot about where this is happening, but who is it happening to? Well, when you look at this slide, take a look at that second bullet. That second bullet says that we have an age range from 9 to 75 years old that we know we've had a trafficking victim. And when we talk about statistics, you know, please understand that these are what we were able to capture. This is what we were able to capture. So out there somewhere, we had a human trafficking victim at the youngest age of 9. And I believe that's about 3rd grade, up until 75 years old. Yes, it does happen here in New Jersey. And here are just some recent news articles that came right through your email, came right through your text, right on Facebook. In January of 2020, I actually got a text when this came out about a child service worker right here in New Jersey who was actually the perpetrator and was actually engaging in human trafficking of a client. And just think about that. Look at that picture. It really doesn't go against what we normally think about when we think about someone who is the perpetrator and actually engaging in human trafficking. 2019, we had a man convicted of sex trafficking of a young girl, 14 years old. And you know what? He groomed her on social media. And this is one of the big aspects that we as a community really have to get our hands around, especially now that we are in this global health crisis, a pandemic, and our children are spending more and more time on social media. 2018, we had a tip of activity at a suburban home. As my colleague also said, that trafficking does not necessarily have to mean movement. And here we have it, so many different examples of how this is happening in plain sight. Morris County human trafficker, thankfully for the work that's being done with law enforcement, organizations such as New Jersey Coalition. We're going to talk about a lot about our legislative call, but we were fortunate that in this case, we got a long sentence of 40 years in prison for someone who was a perpetrator of trafficking victims, 15 and 17 years old. So again, if you just take a moment and just do a Google search, human trafficking in New Jersey, you will see, I would say, success stories where we're actually able to capture and prosecute these perpetrators here in New Jersey. Why in New Jersey? You know, well, we have the best spot. I would say we have one of the best spots here in New Jersey. We have the 95 corridor, we have air and seaport, we have the roadways, the train. We are the very populated state. We have the proximity to New York and Philly. You know, we can travel just a few minutes and get to Atlantic City. So all these areas are potential areas of where perpetrators can move very freely. But again, when you look at this, also remember, and I need to stress this, is that you don't have to have movement. But I will also say that when trafficking is in plain sight, traffickers will move their in order to maintain anonymity. So it does happen, but just please understand that because of where we're located, you don't necessarily have to have movement for trafficking, but we are specifically located in areas where we can have that movement. So we talked about earlier, Susan mentioned that there are areas where we will have special vulnerabilities for trafficking. And one thing I will say, that when it comes to a perpetrator, these folks are master manipulators. They are masters at what they do. And I don't want to say that to pump them up, but it's true. They're in it for the long haul. Oftentimes, they're not looking for something to turn around very quickly. But when they're starting to groom, when they're starting to make relationships, they know that it's going to go over a period of time. So they're looking for potential victims in areas of risk, in areas of systems. They're looking for issues, problems at home. They're looking in the foster system because there's a breakdown there. They're looking for teens that are homeless. They're looking for the LGBTQ community. This is another area where traffickers are always lurking. Someone with substance abuse, because these are areas of risk.
These are just two examples of the thousands of youth that have been sex trafficked. Holly Austin Smith was a New Jersey teenager. Teresa Flores is the founder of SOAP, Save Our Adolescents from Prostitution, who works very closely with us at the Coalition. But both of them, when they were in middle and high school, were vulnerable. Their self-esteem was low for various reasons. And so when someone paid attention to them, they fell into it's forced fraud or coercion. It was a coercion where the boyfriending, Teresa says that she knew not to go in his car. She knew not to go in his house. All the red lights said not to do this. And when he said, "I like you," she put aside her fears and just walked into his home. She was drugged and raped and filmed. And that film, they were able to control her for, I think, over 2 years. She had to try to earn back and by doing service. Holly was with a group of friends, and the friendships were changing as they were getting older, and she felt the loss. And a man approached her and told her that he was beautiful and convinced her to do something that she never thought that she would do. This story is repeated over and over again in our middle schools, our high schools, even younger, as we saw at 9 years old. So we just wanted to put a face to people that we know that are here more local.
So traffickers, as we said, seek their victims everywhere. When we're talking about where we populate, we talked about those areas of risk, but there's some other areas that they are lurking, and as I said, they're in it for the long haul, and they're very strategic in how they pick out their victims. There's areas of false love, boyfriending, job offers for modeling. And I talk about this a little bit because I have a daughter, a young adult who's actually in the arts and entertainment industry. And she's always going out on interviews and auditions. And, sometimes it makes me very uncomfortable. And, I always tell parents that, it is our job to get into our children's business, despite the fact that my daughter may be 30, but I'm still going to get into her business because we don't know who's behind that ad. Candy sale and magazine sales. We see this oftentimes in the train station. A little kid will come up to you, ask you to buy candy. We don't know exactly who is behind. Oftentimes it's very suspicious. If you do a little Google search, sometimes you will see that many gangs are actually behind that, where they're forcing these kids to buy this candy and they take the money from them. And gang recruitment. We don't have to talk too much about that because we know how those things do occur. Familiar trafficking is something that we don't talk about that much, but it does happen, as well as survival sex. If you're in need of a meal, you could be put into a specific situation where you're actually making that exchange. As I said, traffickers use manipulation and isolation to groom their victims. I can't stress this enough. They are in it for the long haul. They find a way into the child's life, whether it's real or virtual. If you're on social media, they'll actually find a post that a child may put up, and if they've not a lot of likes on it, because our brains are conditioned to get that satisfaction. So if there's not a lot of likes, they'll like it and start to create a relationship. You start to see the same person on your feed. You may not know them, and then they'll start to engage you in a different way. Traffickers give gifts, especially virtual, if you're a gamer. And as we said earlier, this is not just something that happens to women and girls. This happens to boys as well. They're always looking for ways to offer a solution to a problem. So if you're on social media and you're saying you're having a bad day, potentially that is something that they would look for. One of the things I often say when I'm teaching in the community is that they look for young women who walk with their heads down sometimes, because it's sort of an indication of low self-esteem. And they'll start to watch them and wait for that opportunity to start to engage. And as I said, start to offer that false love. So again, they are master manipulators. Again, here are some other tactics that they engage in, giving gifts in terms. Now you owe me. I've given you, if you're homeless, I've given you a place to stay. Now you owe me. You owe me. And oftentimes victims feel like it's their fault. And one of the things that many people say is, why don't they just leave? Why don't they just get out of the situation? But unfortunately, if you've spent time with someone who has manipulated to a certain degree, you might actually start to feel shame. And even if you're in a situation that that you really you feel like you want to get out of, you feel like you did this to yourself. And these are the types of things that these perpetrators actually, we talk about that force, fraud, or coercion. These are the type of things that they are very strategic in how they do it. So we just can't say, why don't they leave? Because this is something that we have no idea what would happen if they should leave. If they leave, they may potentially be in a very violent situation. Hurt may come to them, hurt may come to their families. It's difficult to say, why don't they leave? Some of the red flags we talk about, and this is not an all-encompassed review, but this is just something to think about when we think about the red flags. When you're dealing with someone, they're often reluctant to talk about it. They're reluctant to speak. Oftentimes they're exhausted, or they may be engaged with someone, maybe an older gentleman, sometimes we'll see this, or even someone within their age, where they're dominated. They have a dominating and controlling personality. They don't want you to talk to them unless they're in the room with them. And, sometimes when victims may even come into healthcare, you may see a trafficker doesn't want to leave the room so the nurse can actually do an exam. They're fearful. They're alienated. They become alienated from their family members. So this is some of the signs that you start to see for someone who is a victim of human trafficking.
At this point, I think it could be very discouraging. It just seems that it's so prevalent. It just seems that it's so easy for people to fall into it. It seems that the traffickers are so skillful at what they do that it could be hopeless. But I truly believe it is anything but. I'm a member of the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking because we are making a difference and trying to bring an end to human trafficking. We're raising awareness. Our organization is made up of over 180 affiliate organizations. We have over 100 volunteers. We have faith-based groups, government agencies, academics, law enforcement, people in healthcare and in education across the gamut. And we are united in our zeal and our mission to end human trafficking. We do it several different ways. We connect, educate, and advocate. So connect, we have events similar to tonight. We have a speakers group that, a speakers bureau where we go out and we speak at events all across the state of New Jersey. Now we're doing them virtually. We look forward to doing them in person again. We have social media campaigns, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more, a few slides down, but ways that anybody can get involved through their network and connections. We have numerous committees, arts committee, healthcare committee, education committee, legislative committee. We have many committees, slave-free commerce committee, outreach committee. Our committees are active. They meet independently, virtually. So we are made up of many parts, but we are all working together to educate. We are educating and informing and raising awareness. We are a survivor-informed organization. We are very thankful to our survivor consultant, Gina Cavallo, who has given us tremendous insight into the world of human trafficking, so that when we do things, we will do them considering our survivors, that we do not want to re-exploit them. We do not want to cause triggers. We want to be effective in helping survivors move to thrivers. As I said, we have a speakers bureau. Our Locker Slam program is going on this month in schools across the state, where students can share our stickers. They had done it as a magnet in previous years. Now we're doing it virtually through stickers and raising that awareness. SOAP is the organization that Teresa Flores created, and we work with her to bring an outreach to hotels and motels across our state. Safe Saturdays is something we're really excited about. It is a new program where it is geared for elementary and preschool students, where our arts co-chair, Lindsay Terry Bryant, wrote a book called Safe, and she's a performer, and we go to, now we're doing it virtually. We will be going to libraries so that we can engage with them, children, when they are very young, so that they know what it is to be safe. And our advocacy group, our legislative committee, is remarkable in some of the bills that we have been influential in helping to pass, back from the 2013 bill that made, that was our landmark bill about human trafficking in the state of New Jersey. And we still are refining and coming up with more and more ways to advocate. We have a call to action right now. We're going to be asking you to call the governor. All this information about connecting, educating, and advocating is on our website, safernj.org. We are a voice for those who have no voice. We are speaking up in our Assembly and Senate with the governor, creating bills for, the most recent one is having the posters with the national hotline placed in strategic areas across the state where a victim might see it and be inclined to reach out to the national hotline, get victim services that way. Our previous advocacy helped to create a landmark education bill that will bring human trafficking curriculum into schools across our state. these are just some numbers of the influence that we have been fortunate to be a part of, distributing the magnets, visiting hotels, and connecting with mayors across the municipalities. And this is what, to me, I hope that you take home with you. You learned about the issue. You learned that it's a large issue. It's a growing issue. It is a crime and it is an abomination, but it is not the end because we can make a difference. It is a crime in our communities, but we are in our communities and we are in hospitals and we see victims that are brought into hospitals. And once we know that what it is to be a victim of human trafficking, maybe we can be help to prevent human trafficking. So these are just some things that I just want to bring to your attention of ways that you can make a difference and be part of the solution instead of being part of the problem. The first is educate yourself. The first thing is what you are doing tonight is just learning about what is human trafficking, where is human trafficking, and what can we do about human trafficking? And now that you know, if you share it with your community, if you share it with your family, if you share it with your children, if you engage with your children when they're on a game and you don't know what they're doing, you don't want to be punitive towards that child. What you want to do is enter into their world so that if something should happen, that they feel comfortable to come to you and tell you, this is what happened, and you will be able to find a solution for them. You will be equipped to know who to call and who to follow up with. So educate yourself. Once you know, you tell someone, now twice as many people know, right? If each one of us tells someone tomorrow, I was on this event last night, learned about human trafficking. What do you know about it? In fact, I'm just going to share a little story right now, but this happened to me today. I was in the doctor's office and I was talking with someone there. She asked me what I was doing tonight and I told her about this and she started asking me questions. And as we just continued to have this conversation, waiting, for the doctor to come in, she said, well, you go out there and change the world. And I want to say that to you. I want everyone here who's listening tonight to feel that you are someone who can change the world. The third item on this list is talking about fair trade certified products. And we talked about labor trafficking being 80% around the world. Many of the products that we buy, in fact, in particular, when did you have your last cup of coffee? When did you have your last piece of chocolate? Those two industries have human trafficking from the seed all the way through. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to choose items with our wallet that we know do not have slave labor in the supply chain. One of our committees at the coalition is the Slave Free Commerce Committee, because there's mica in our makeup, in our phones, that is mined by children in Congo. There is all sorts of slave labor around the world that is in the products that we buy. And so if we go to the supermarket and we see a wall of Green Mountain K-Cup coffee boxes, some of them will have a fair trade logo and some won't. If every person chose the one that was fair trade, we would be using our wallets to tell Green Mountain, this is important to us. We want slavery-free supply chains. And they will make that because that's what the consumer is demanding. Each one of us can talk to our legislators. We have a call to action now for people to call the governor, because the bill that just passed with through the efforts of our legislative committee about the posters passed through the Assembly, through the Senate, and is waiting for the governor's signature. So we're asking everyone on this call, if you've not yet done so, to call Governor Murphy and ask him to sign the bill. I believe it's A228. Kate, correct me later with the correct, and we'll give you the phone number to call, and we'll give you the bill number to call. One thing that I would like everyone to do right now, if you've not already done so, is to put in your phone the national hotline number. You can put it in two ways, 888-3737-888. That number can be used for victims to call if they want to be free to escape. It can be used if you have a suspicion, and the hotline number will contact law enforcement. It can be used if you have questions about what human trafficking is, or if you suspect maybe something going on with a family member or something, a student at school or whatever. Call the hotline number. They are a resource that is for everyone. You can text the hotline number by texting either help or info to the number Be Free, which is on your keypad 233-733. But I'm asking everyone on the call tonight to put this number in your phone for your resource. And the last thing on this list is to join us. Join through a committee, join through your organization, but be a part of making a difference. Some of the things that we are doing currently, this January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So I just want to point out to you some interesting ways that you can share with your community. One of them is a social media campaign that was created originally before the Super Bowl came to New Jersey. And it's called the HT Challenge. And it just uses the theme of football to raise awareness about HT being human trafficking, but also being halftime. And so on our website, safernj.org, there's a page about the HT Challenge. So the week leading up to Super Bowl, if you are a football fan and you might want to share a post on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, if you want to share about the HT Challenge or about the Super Bowl, put both hashtags in your tweet and spread awareness. The directions and any information that you want is on the website. We're very excited to announce that starting this week is a game, an interactive game geared for youth called Slam Dunk, using basketball with Final Four, or March Madness, I should say, not Final Four. And so the Slam Dunk game, the information is on our website, where students can use the game to raise awareness about the issue of human trafficking. Our interns created or worked with to create all the questions that these students and kids can play in this game. Just use your social media, follow us on social media. All of our handles have just recently changed, but they are on our website, and we're active on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And so these are practical things that we can do to make a difference, because all social justice change has come because we have changed the culture, and what was once okay is no longer okay. And if all of us on this call are able to share this information with others, and then they feel it's not okay, we will start to end the demand for trafficked people, trafficked products.
Thank you, Susan, for outlining all our activities. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking action. Thank you for taking action in advance to go to the website for all the information. And thank you for making New Jersey a safer state. Back to you, Kate.
Thank you so much, LA and Susan, for that fantastic presentation. I've been putting into the chat box some of the things that Susan and LA were mentioning. So please take a look at that, and you can find links to the game that was mentioned, which is called Slam Dunk Against Human Trafficking, as well as the phone numbers for the governor and details about the bill they were mentioning. But at this point, it is my great honor to present to you an unusual conversation, not one we would typically have, that we'll have between our president, Danny Papa, and our survivor consultant, Gina Cavallo. So Danny Papa is a K-12 supervisor of social studies, art and technology education and serves as the president of the Board of Trustees at the Coalition and co-chairs the Education Committee for the Coalition. Gina Cavallo is a New Jersey native. She is an expert leader in the anti-trafficking field, educating and training government agencies, schools, faith-based and non-profit organizations, as well as healthcare workers. Gina serves on the board of the Coalition as well, and is also the Coalition's survivor consultant. She is the recipient of the 2020 National Liberators Award for Survivor Leader, and was recently appointed to the New Jersey Commission on Human Trafficking. Gina is the founder of the new organization, We Rise. Rise spelling out respect, inspire, support, and empower. It will expand her current work to empower and mentor her fellow survivors of human trafficking, because she believes that together we can make a difference. So at this point, if I could ask Susan, if you could stop sharing your screen.
I'm trying. Can you do it from where you are? Because I am having a hard time to close it out.
Yeah, there we go.
So, thank you.
So now it is my very great pleasure to introduce Danny and Gina in this unusual format. And I will ask Gina, who is going to have this conversation and question and answer with Danny, Gina, to say hello and to please ask Danny the first question. Gina, can you hear us?
Yes. I was looking for Danny. There you are. Okay. Hey, Danny.
Hi, Gina.
Oh, it's good to see you. I wasn't sure if you were here or not. I was getting a little concerned. So it's really nice being here, having this somewhat can be uncomfortable conversation, but it's important to have these courageous conversations. They're necessary. And I think the more we have them, the more we find it to be necessary. And the more kids will also find it useful and necessary in order for us to go forward. Danny, can you share with us what you see with the current reality for our students and how this pandemic has affected them in their mental, emotional state? We know that predators are out there and they're looking for vulnerability. And although LA and Susan said it perfectly earlier that they are masterminded. So how are you and how are the teachers? How is everyone coping with this? And what are you seeing?
Sure. Thank you, Gina. It's really good to see you as well. And it's an honor to speak with you. And I just want you to know that, I know I say this often, but I want to say it again, that you are such an inspiration to me personally, such an inspiration to the coalition and to all of the work. And it's just amazing to see. And, you know, you've said it so many times that your prayer was to meet one survivor. And not only have you met countless survivors, you're empowering survivors, and you are putting survivors and inspiring them and empowering them to be in positions of leadership, and you're amplifying their voices. And it's just amazing the work that you're doing, and you're such an inspiration. And I'm honored to speak with you about this, and I'm looking forward to learning from you as well. So to answer your question, you know, I think that for individuals that may not have school-age children, college-age children, may not be aware of how drastically this, how drastically the pandemic has affected children, as far as and adolescents, as well as in college students. If you think about it from their perspective, right? Students are involved in so many different aspects of the school community. School is just not 7 to 2:30 or 3. It's what happens after school. It's what happens on the weekends. It's where they have community. It's where they have safety. And being in quarantine, being relegated to their homes and their houses, they've been really stripped from, safety nets. They've been stripped from their community, their social interactions, relationships, friendships. And from what I have seen as an educator, there has been such a negative impact. In our school district is just like every other school district. We are seeing an enormous increase in failure rates. The failure rates are associated with students who are feeling extremely apathetic, unmotivated, disconnected, disengaged. I've had multiple conversations with so many different students, reaching out to them. How come you're not doing your work? What can we do to support you better? There's times where we won't even hear back. There's times that we can't even get in contact with certain students or even their families, or because they're just completely disconnected from our school community. I personally feel like that our children and our young people are an age demographic that have been affected emotionally and intellectually more than any other age demographic in our country, simply because they're relegated to their homes, and what we're seeing and what they're experiencing is an increase of loneliness, an increase of depression, an increase of anxiety. I've spoken to parents, I've spoken to the kids. It's the same story. My kid was an honor roll student. COVID happened, and now they're getting D's and F's and barely passing. They don't want to turn the cameras on. They don't want to go to class. They don't want to do the work. Our kids are not used to learning remotely. Of no choice of their own, they've been placed in a very difficult situation. And I personally believe in grace. I believe in extending grace to all of our students. And from an administrative point of view, it's extremely important to create, an environment that is extremely inclusive, an environment that is gracious and understanding to the situation that they're in, and try to meet them exactly where they're at. Unfortunately, we are seeing many negative effects, whether it's in their grades, emotionally, and that is leading to the vulnerabilities that you described, as well as LA and Susan described. So yeah, this is a very difficult time for our young people. And so what I'm curious to know from you is from a survivor's perspective, what advice, being the current state that we're in, what advice could you give to parents, young people, children, as well as educators about how to maybe reach some of these students that are in such a vulnerable state? And one other point is that you asked about teachers. Teachers are in a very difficult situation as well. They're doing everything they can to meet their kids halfway. They're teaching longer hours than they normally would. They're extending deadlines. They're making phone calls. They're sending the emails. They're posting the messages, and oftentimes they're not getting responses. Kids are sitting there with cameras off, with their cameras facing the ceiling, and teachers are taking it very personal. And it's a very difficult situation. So I'd love to know what perspectives you could share with parents, students, and educators, as well as some advice and what you're seeing from your perspective, and how we can reach them.
Thank you, Danny. And about that prayer, watch what you prayed for. No, but I'll tell you, I prayed I wanted to meet one survivor, and I can't believe it's almost 3 years, and I have met hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of survivors. And, it's just like with the coalition, I couldn't live without them. We lean on each other. We support one another. We all have our lived experience. We all learn from each other. We're there. We're loyal to one another. We support one another, and we learn from each other. It's just like with the coalition. There's so much we learn from each other. That's a loaded question. There is so much, and everything you're saying is, I don't want to say it's normal, but given the times we're in and the challenges, when we see what the adults are going through and the effects that this has on each of us, regardless if we're a survivor or not, I mean, we're all surviving something. And
great point.
So can we just imagine the magnitude that this has on kids, that they're growing, they're still developing mentally, emotionally, physically, and they're reacting quicker than they could articulate their thoughts, their feelings. There's so much social pressure upon them, even though they're not in school. I loved how you had mentioned about, which is so important, that, you know, you and the teachers are doing it already, meeting the kids where they are, where they're at. So if kids are only showing up online, or they're only producing, say, 50%, I think what's really would make an impact on the kids is, instead of asking, well, where's the other homework, or it's incomplete, I think we need to give them a little latitude, considering the times we're in.
Yep.
And just lifting them up for what they did, not what they didn't do. Does that make sense?
I love that. That's great.
It's what LA and Susan said something earlier, and it so resonated me, as I know it would with my brother and sister survivors. Shame and fear can cripple us. And, you know, just with myself, even though I've been in recovery and I continue my journey, there's still bumps in the road. We all have our bumps in the road. However, when we think about it, I mean, I sometimes can get caught up. I mean, thank God my faith is strong. I have good support system. I have good tools. I have great mentors and strong, seasoned survivor sisters and brothers, but we all still hit those bumps in the road. And I think what's important in the times that we're in, meeting the kids where they're at, because if a teacher is online with the kids, you have so many kids online, and this virtual stuff is all new to all of us. And when the teachers start calling kids out, oh, okay, so where's your homework? Or, you know, how come you're not paying attention? Or how come you're not looking in the camera? Or why are you looking? That's a shame. That's a shame. Even if the kids are right or wrong, let's say the kids are wrong for what they're doing, there's one thing I learned a long time ago in human resources, and it took me a long way, and law attorneys told me this: never take an employee, or never take anyone, if you have to say anything to them, do it behind closed doors. Don't do it like in front of others, because it could really hurt them. You know, you want the kids, you want to encourage them to continue to come back, you know, even if they're not all there. You want to lift them up, praise them. Look, some of these kids, Danny, you know it and I know it, that don't even have to study. Some kids don't have to study and they could ace everything. Those kids that are struggling, I can't imagine what the kids that are with the special needs are going through, you know, that are struggling even more. Yes. So if they do a D- or however you do the grading system, I would praise them, you know, encourage them, because that's going to go a long way. So I think it's so important. Also, you know, I want to tell you more about that as we go along here, but I just think it's so important to meet others where they're at. And before we speak, are we going to shame this person? You know, are we going to cause them not to want to come back tomorrow? You know, let's, if they didn't do any homework, let's try to draw something positive about them. So when they disconnect from this phone call, from this class, that they're going to want to come back tomorrow, you know?
That's great. I love that.
And, you know, honestly, survivors too, even the seasoned survivors that have organizations that are thriving out there, everybody's hitting bumps in the road, you know? And I can't imagine too, the parents that are not engaged with their kids at home, how lonely these kids must feel, because they're either losing their jobs, or they have to work 2 jobs, or they're single moms or single dad households. So yeah, right. I hope that helps.
Absolutely. I love the point you made about rewarding them for what they have done, and not holding against them the things that they have not done. I think that's I love that point. I'm gonna really think on that more, and because these are the conversations that we're having every day at the administrative level. Is what are we gonna do with this rash of failures currently? And what can be done. And we're having conversations with other districts, and everyone's kind of in the same boat. This is a really, this is all new territory that we're trying to navigate. And so, yeah, I love that point.
Danny, sometimes we can overthink, or we can reinvent a wheel when we don't need to. And I think sometimes if we just keep it simple and listen to our hearts of treating others, regardless of the age, how we want to be treated.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived a lifetime of being reminded of my failures, and one failure just led into another failure. And what happens at the end of the day, it just leaves you feeling so empty, so worthless. And that's what really creates more vulnerability for these criminals to be able to find us. And that's what we don't want to do, because if we don't educate, if we don't embrace these kids, then that's where the traffickers are going to find them. But Danny, I'd like to ask you, you've been supporting with your student-led efforts to bring awareness of human trafficking, I believe for over 10 years. Have you found, or what have you found in your experience that has been helpful to engage students in all your efforts?
Sure. I would say that the number one thing that I observed is that young people have a unique sensitivity to injustice. And when a young person learns about an injustice that exists on the globe, there's a different level of engagement on their part. It's and I could, I remember very vividly teaching the Holocaust and teaching about the atrocities that took place, and students just being physically angry, could not understand how a human being could do and commit the types of crimes that they've committed. And in teaching the Holocaust or genocide or slavery, students being physically angry and not being able to comprehend how injustice like that could happen and take place. And so it's that unique sensitivity to injustice that really fuels students to then want to take what they've learned and then do something about it. And that's essentially how the work that I've had such an honor to engage in with my students started. When I first introduced the issue of human trafficking, a very quiet, unassuming student came up to me. Her name was Kate, and wanted to know more. I gave her some websites to research. She came back and said, "Mr. Papa, I spent the whole weekend learning about human trafficking, and we have to do something about this." To me, that is what education is. Not sitting in a classroom and just listening to someone talk, filling your brain with a bunch of information that you're never going to do anything with. To me, education, and I've always said that history to me is a verb. It's something that we make. Education should be a verb. It should not be a noun. Education is something that we should be doing every day. We take what we've learned and then we act upon it and we do something with that knowledge, because that essentially is how we're going to make the world a better place. We've identified at the coalition that education is prevention, and it's prevention because it requires action, right? When we learn about an atrocity and an injustice like human trafficking, we are then compelled to do something about it. And whatever that is that we do, whether it's we donate $20 to an organization, or we tell one other person about it, or we retweet something about human trafficking, that's doing something to make a difference. And I also feel that passion is contagious. When a teacher is passionate about something, the students are going to be passionate. If a student is passionate about something, their classmates are going to be passionate about it. For example, I know this is just an example. My mother-in-law is a passionate Tampa Bay Lightning fan. I'm not a hockey fan at all, but when she's talking about the Lightning and talking about hockey, I find myself wanting to know more and wanting to have more of an interest in something that I have really no interest in. But it's because that passion is contagious, and I found that in the classroom, that is another type of strategy that is just really, really highly effective to engage students in learning, but then also to inspire them and empower them to do something with what they've learned. And I just really believe in raising up activists, students who are just active in making the world a better place and engaging in issues of social justice, confronting injustice where it exists in all forms, and essentially that is what I personally believe really engages students in learning. But I know that you, Gina, as well, you spend a lot of time going into schools, and from your perspective, from visiting schools and speaking to students, what do you feel is an effective way to reach students? What do you feel like resonates with students today?
Well, it's funny because it kind of piggybacks off of what you were just talking about, Danny, which is pretty powerful and effective and so true. And I have spoken with kids from middle school to college to universities, and they're all saying the same thing. And it's like they're telling me exactly what it is that they want. And what they don't want is they're overwhelmed by real life, and they have their heads buried in books. They don't have avenues where they can speak to. They want to speak about real issues. They want to be able to communicate about their thoughts, their feelings, about everything you just pretty much tapped on. And when I go to schools, a few of the principals took surveys afterwards, and I was just blown away by the feedback of the students, from the young to the older ones, saying that they wish that they heard more of this. Yeah. They thought this subject and about online and about predators and about trafficking and grooming, they only thought that this happened in the movies. And this was younger and older. And some of them did react, though, because there were a few in between. When I went out and talked, I usually asked to have social workers or nurses on hand in case someone is affected, even though my language and my presentation is always appropriate to the age level when I do a presentation. But still, somebody could have an adverse reaction if they're experiencing something, or if they know someone else that has experienced something. They always say that they wish that people talk to them about this, and this is exactly what they need to learn and what they want to learn. Yeah. They can't believe, whether it's me, I've gone on speaking engagements myself or with another survivor, and we could be coming from different backgrounds, different cultures, different ages, and no matter what we look like, no matter how old we are, they're like, there's real survivors in New Jersey, they're just, they can't believe it, Right. So I've spoken with these kids, and what they want is they want to talk about things. They want to engage. They want to be educated. Like you say, I often say that you've said that for years since I've been on board, that education is awareness, and awareness is prevention. And that's so important. Kids want to talk about the real issues. Yeah. I was talking to a couple of the kids, and they said, we're bored. We want to talk about things. We want adults to talk to us about real life issues. Yeah. And if they don't have that at home, it does put that individual kid, whether they're special needs or whether they're acing it, it doesn't matter. It's going to put them more in a vulnerable situation. So I think that kids want us to get to know them, and they want to feel empowered too. They want to feel like they belong. They want to feel connected. And how do we do that? We do that by bringing them in. It's just like if you go fishing and you're bringing in a fish, you have the kid there, take that opportunity, take advantage, hear from them. We need to hear from them. We need to let their voices be heard too. Absolutely. Yes, we need voices of survivors and experts, we also need to have the voices of kids be heard.
Absolutely.
I feel even with the coalition, I love what we're doing with Kids with Coalition and even the intern program, but I feel we need to do it. We need to step up our game and do it even more,
Yeah.
to bring these kids to us, let them volunteer, let them present, let them do projects,
Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree more. As an educator, I believe in student voice. Every decision that I make, and I've told teachers that when we make decisions, we're going to consider what students have to say about the decisions we're making. So there's been some pretty big decisions that we've made, and we have consulted with the students, and we've heard them out. We've heard their perspective, and in the end, we've made decisions on some pretty big things like final exams and things like that, based upon the feedback that we received from students. And in the work that I've done with Project Stay Gold, my absolute favorite thing was to sit back and just listen to students talk about this issue that they became so passionate about fighting, about preventing, about raising awareness. And just listening to them and their passion was so inspiring, to me. And I agree with you 100%. We need to amplify student voices. The March for Our Lives movement is something that I just loved. I felt like finally society is listening to kids. Finally, they're giving them a platform to speak, because when kids speak, it is so powerful. It is so inspiring. Adults will stop in their tracks and listen to a kid who is so intelligent and passionate and articulate about a cause. I can't help but think about, yesterday at the inauguration, I forgot her name, but the young woman who spoke poetry. How amazing and inspiring! I felt I was so overcome with emotion listening to her. I shared it with my teachers and asked them to share it out with their students if they haven't seen it. But again, it's the power of a young person. That's right, Amanda Gorman. Thank you. The power of a young person just speaking from their heart is just so incredible.
Yeah, I heard that. She was incredibly powerful. Yeah, very emotional. Danny, what do we, when we talk about online, like, with the students in school, what are you seeing with schools, with the kids, with online? I know safety is important. Like, how do you see this, and what's some of your feedback and thoughts?
Yeah, so something that we've been talking a lot about is that as educators, every single person, every single adult that's educated in a school district or in a school system, when they're inside the building, every single person's number one responsibility and goal is the safety and security of the students when they're in the building. The custodian's job is to make sure that the doors are locked, the exterior doors are locked. We have security personnel, secretaries. Their job is to ensure that people are being screened when they come to the front door before they're let in. Obviously, admin and teachers have a number of safety protocols in place when students are in the building. However, we know that the large majority of our students now are learning virtually. They're learning at home. They're not in our buildings. But that doesn't mean that our priority of safety and security now is put aside. If anything, schools need to wake up to the reality of what we are seeing, and the increase of online grooming, online exploitation of our kids, and the safety and security of our students online as educators needs to be our top priority. Just like it's our top priority when they're in our building, it has to be when they're outside of our building. And what we see is the increase of screen time. We know that students are learning from their phone, they're learning from their computer. Pretty much everything now that, especially with schools that are fully Google, and I guess Microsoft schools as well, everything could be accessed for that class on a phone, right? Kids have laptops and schools give the laptops and so on, but we know kids are on their phone. But the other thing we also know is that while they're in class, they're also on a lot of different apps, right? Whether they're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, they may be, and teachers have talked a number of times of watching kids while they're in class playing video games. And we also know that students are on a whole host of messaging apps. So the increase of screen time is leading to an increase of even more time on social media, more time on video games. And as we've described, there's an increase of vulnerabilities. And, you know, students are craving relationship. They're craving contact and communication. And now that communication, contact, and relationship is relegated to a digital format, right? And that digital format is, you know, social media and so on, which unfortunately leads to having conversations with people that may not know who they're talking about. In the times that I've spoken to students far before COVID has happened, I would ask a question. And I always say to them in my presentation, do not raise your hand, but I want you to ask yourself this question and think about it inside. How many of you have ever engaged in a conversation online with someone that you do not know who they really are? And as that phrase, that saying goes, eyes are never quiet. Students' eyes always are very telling that that they are, I could say 90 to 100% of their eyes are telling me when I ask that question that they have definitely engaged in conversations with people that they do not know. So, you know, maybe you could talk a little bit more about now that there's the increase of screen time, increase of vulnerabilities, and predators know that that is the reality, right? Increased screen time, increased vulnerabilities. You know, from your perspective and all of your experience and expertise, what could that lead to? And then what could we do to, I guess we could talk a little bit more about what we could do to prevent that, but.
Good question. You know, like we talk about, everybody can be vulnerable regardless of your age. Yeah. Of course, kids are more vulnerable, but you can have an adult be just as vulnerable as a young person. You can have a younger person make a better choice than an older person. You know, I think it all depends on where someone's at. Grooming has increased and will continue to increase online. It's the, you know, it's the world, it's where we are now. I think that kids are just starving to fit in. They want to fit in so bad. If their dreams and talents aren't being used to their full potential, you know, they're going to go on there. They want to feel like there's a purpose. They're bored. I can't tell you how many kids, younger and older, told me, I'm bored. So we need to build the kids' confidence. And how do we do that? First of all, I think it's important that parents, teachers, family, extended family, whoever that may be, it's important that we teach kids that it's okay to say no. You know, we even see it within our own life. If you pay attention to it, like if somebody comes around and says, oh, kiss your aunt, kiss your grandmother, or say hi to that stranger that just said, oh, you're so cute. But kids are being forced to, you know, they're not comfortable, you know, so they're feeling uncomfortable. So if a stranger, you know, I was with my daughter's little one and at the store around the holidays, and this lady came up to her and she was eating a cookie. She said to my granddaughter, she said, can I have some? Can I have some? And the lady was right in her face. And I turned the stroller and I says, I'm sorry. I says, but I don't encourage her to, you know, and you could see my granddaughter was cringing. Her body language was, she was feeling uncomfortable, but the lady was like, oh, she's so cute and how old she is. But so my point is, I think it's really important that kids follow their instincts. If we educate kids, and it's not just the teacher's responsibility, parents have a responsibility at home too. We all do. We could all make a difference, like Susan said earlier. We could all do something. And if we teach kids to follow their instincts, we're empowering them. You know, even if it's one thing that we do today to empower a kid, regardless of how old they are, Danny, you're going to be empowering that kid. Many times we ask other people, what should I wear? How do I look? What would you say? What would you do? How does this look? Or what if I say this and I don't say that? We're empowering other people when we do that. We need to follow our own instincts because we were all born and blessed with our own instincts. You know, we were all given a heart, ears, nose, mind, body, and we need to use that. And I think somewhere along the way in all of our lives, we can relate to the fact of putting our identity into others before ourselves. So if we build on each person's confidence and also let them know it's okay in a respectful way to say no to others, I think it really empowers people to know that when they are, and if they are, hopefully they're not, but if they are engaged with a predator that has obviously bad intentions, whether it's online, whether it's at the mall, whether it's at a school like Teresa Flores experienced, we will be able to distinguish what that feels like inside of us. Well, this doesn't feel good. And we need to allow our sons and our daughters to know that when something doesn't feel right, we need to pay attention to that. And most importantly, parents and teachers need to be able to embrace those kids and not to make them feel, well, I don't believe you, or minimize what they're saying, or discredit what they're saying. I think it's important that we have to believe kids when they talk to us. We don't need to discredit them. And we don't need to take that away from them. Because if a kid is coming to you, I don't care if you're related to them or not, the last thing you want to do is make them feel shame or fear. You want them to say, you want to say to them, look, you are safe. You know, you're not alone, you're safe. Nothing anybody says or does to you is gonna matter. I'm here to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you were talking about when your granddaughter, right, was approached. It reminds me of the question that, and it's been so haunting to me, that Lieutenant John Pizarro asks in his webinar. You know, how many parents would be okay with some strange person walking up to their granddaughter, grandson, niece, nephew, son or daughter on a playground and just start having a conversation? We have a playground that's walking distance from our house. And I take Gracie down there pretty much every day when it's nice out and warmer out. And, you know, would I ever be comfortable with some strange man walking up to Gracie and having an intimate conversation with her? Absolutely not. What parent would? But that's what's happening every single day on the online playground, which is social media, which is internet-based games, which is messaging apps, where strange people are engaging in conversation, strange, you know, individuals are engaging in conversation with kids, engaging in conversation with young people. And that's, you know, that's the reality of where we're at regarding online grooming, which leads to all forms of exploitation. And, you know, so with that said, you know, maybe you could talk a little bit about, you know, how that happens. How does, you know, what are some of the tactics that are, you know, used by the predator and their trafficker online to then achieve their goal, right? And their end goal is to have that arranged, that in-person meeting, you know, like you were saying, like Teresa Flores trafficked in her school. What are some of those tactics that are being used and employed that we can use to now expose and bring to the light so that parents, educators, grandparents, aunts, uncles, children, young people could know about so they can be safe?
Well, most of the time, Danny, it's going to come off like just a normal, typical, you don't even know how old that trafficker could be. A girl, it could be a guy, and they're going to act like that it's their age level. So if the kid is 12 years old, they're going to act like that's about how old they are when they're really not. And they're going to prey on them by looking for their vulnerabilities. And usually what do parents do? You know, you need to do your homework, you know, you need to do this. And a lot of times kids will complain about their parents, even though they don't mean it in a harsh way, but they'll just complain, oh, I have to do my homework. I can't do this or that. And they're going to take any little opportunity, whether it's they know that they just broke up with their boyfriend, or they just broke up with their girlfriend, or they feel that they're not getting a lot of social media likes. These predators already did their homework on this individual, because usually there's pictures of that person. It's very easy to track somebody down, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, what are the other ones that the kids
TikTok,
use?
Twitter,
the Snap.
Snapchat.
Yeah, all those things. I said it wrong one day and the kids just broke out laughing. They
Oh,
thought
yeah.
it was so funny. And I was like, okay, give me a break, you know. But so they're going to go with this, and they're going to, one thing leads into another. It just becomes where they almost become addicted, and they rely on this person to give them, this person is going to fill and meet every one of their needs. There was this girl in college, and there was literally a trafficking ring going on at this college in New Jersey. And this girl she wasn't the most popular, but she was asked out by this guy that was like really good looking, and you know, everybody wanted him to ask them out, and he asked her out, and then he started inviting her to parties. And next thing you knew it, he won her over. And this happens online a lot. And then they meet, and then next thing you know it, he's, you know, luring her and forcing her. One of the big things is that they start they start not talking with their parents. They become very secretive. They won't bother with their friends anymore. So there's so many signs. The problem is that when it reaches a certain point, it's harder to turn back. It makes it much more challenging, because now this girl or this guy definitely did a lot of manipulation with that person. So now the parents or the teacher's job and the law enforcement's job is going to be so much greater. You know, even with the pictures, send me a picture of yourself, and that leads to something else. What's really recommended, at least until, you know, not only building trust and good communication with kids, but what really is important too is that at night, you know, and talk to your kids and let them know this is only temporary, you know, until they are making good choices, because you're only trying to keep them safe. But it's to take their phone out of their room at night. They shouldn't go to bed with their phone, even if it's in a different part of their room. The parents should take those devices out of their room.
Yeah, and I think you raise a great point about the communication and the relationship that parents have, and in the preventative strategies that the coalition has outlined as far as how to prevent online grooming. You know, that's one of them, is having those conversations with your kids, so that they do feel comfortable if they're ever in a situation like you described, where they did share a picture, an inappropriate picture with someone that maybe that they don't feel the shame, that they can go and admit that to, you know, their parent. And if a child doesn't have a parent that they feel they could do that with, you know, who's an adult that they can, you know, do that with? Was it a school counselor, a coach, an aunt or uncle? So I agree. That's such a powerful strategy to help keep our kids safe as well as healthy.
Yeah, that's why kids really want to talk about real life subjects. Danny, can you highlight some of the work that you've been engaged with and the coalition has been doing with the resources and different projects? Yeah,
sure. So I would just, you know, highlight two things. One, the Susan and Ellie alluded to the great work of our legislative committee, and in July of 2019, Governor Murphy signed an incredible bill into law that requires the Department of Education to provide human trafficking guidelines, really a comprehensive outline to school districts on a whole host of different things, how to identify trafficking, how to prevent trafficking within our schools, and then a whole number of resources that schools can use. And so I know, Gina, you've been part of the working group for the DOE, as well as Kate and Aldina, other members of the coalition. It's been such a great working group, and those guidelines are going to be released pretty soon. So we're really looking forward to promoting them and you know, really using them to again further our message of prevention within schools. And then another thing that we've done is our Locker Slam. This year, our focus is on online grooming, asking young people very thought-provoking questions to get them to think critically about what they're doing online. Who is the person behind the follow? Who is the person behind the tweet? Who are you chatting with? And just getting them to ask those very simple questions, but then to inspire critical thinking about, yeah, who am I chatting with? Who is this strange person that just all of a sudden appeared and seems to understand everything about me, and, you know, now wants me to share something with them very personal, or, you know, meet up with them and you know, and have them do exactly what you were saying about the instinct, right? And we've identified it as red flags. I think red flags is a little bit of like an adult term, but we want kids to think about those internal instincts and that feeling like, yeah, something's not right here. And how to identify when it's not right. So that's what we're trying to accomplish through the Locker Slam. And then, as mentioned before, the One Huddle game, which is going to be a really great interactive piece that, again, that's going to prompt a lot of questions about online grooming as well as human trafficking. And another, just our goal at the coalition here is just try to be as innovative as we can in reaching students as well as educators with the message of prevention. So those are a few things, you know, that we're doing. And maybe you could tell us a little bit more about We Rise. I know Kate mentioned it in the opening, as well as the book that you're working on, which is very exciting. Maybe you could share a little bit more about those two things.
We rise. I believe that we rise by lifting others up, and regardless of how old anyone is. You know, again, I refer back to LA, mentioned it earlier along with Susan, that doing any presentations that I've done, I've met a young girl as young as 10 years old who was trafficked, and as well as up to 76 years old. So it happens at all ages. So I think it's very important for me. We Rise is like even lifting kids up, but it's primarily for survivors. We provide financial emergency assistance too, and a couple of things that we did in the past where there was a trafficker that lured this girl from another state, single, with two kids, 7 months old and 2 years old, babies. And she came from another state, a long ways from New Jersey. And she was vulnerable. She was single mom, and, you know, she fell in love with him online, and she moved out to New Jersey. And with her two little ones, and after the honeymoon stage, he wanted to sell her and the kids. So through the financially, sometimes it's very difficult with funds, especially when you're a nonprofit. But because of a generous donor, we were able to fly this mother and her two kids back home and, you know, get her away from her trafficker. We also helped a cancer person, someone with cancer, another survivor that couldn't afford her medication. So there's so many things that we have done. We don't post it and advertise it for confidential reasons, or take pictures or whatever their names are, just to protect them, preserve their dignity and respect. But basically, Danny, that's only part of what we're going to be doing. The other part of what we're doing is bringing survivors to the table so they could share their lived experience, just like the many survivors that we continue to bring to the coalition. There's so many survivors that have come. They have shared not only their lived experiences, because we're more than just our stories, but they come and they share their expertise, because there's not one survivor, including myself, that knows everything. Many times we lean on each other because there's another survivor that may know more than I know, and vice versa. And that's what We Rise is doing too, bringing other survivors, not just to the coalition, but to We Rise, and let them promote their organization, let them promote what they're doing. I believe that whatever it is we're doing, even with our coalition, we need each other, regardless if we're survivors or not, because we all bring valuable information and valuable experience to the table. And it's important that we lift each other up. So that's where we Rise comes from.
That's awesome.
And as far as my book, I was inspired to do my book a couple years ago, but the door really opened for me during COVID last year. And the reason why I felt inspired to do it, because I felt my whole life that everyone else was telling my story for me. I you know, when I look back, it was like, it's like if you tell your friend or you tell your family something, it's like everybody ends up interpreting it differently.
Sure.
You know, they call it that telephone tag too.
Yeah.
By the time it gets back to you, it's like, what? I never said that.
Right.
Or you say, that's not what happened. So for me, I feel like I finally get to tell my story, you know, and there's no lies. There's no, it's just all transparent, and there's no more fear or shame associated with it. I could just tell it the way it was. The good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it. It's, you know, it's in process, it's in the works. So thank you for asking, but so that's what I'm looking forward to, as well as seeing us continue to, you know, flourish with the coalition.
Yeah.
So Danny, I'd like to hear about yourself, like about what your goals are, what your dreams are, what you see yourself doing in the future. And we are just so lucky as a coalition to have such incredible, amazing people that serve in so many different capacities.
Agreed.
From everyone here tonight and everyone that couldn't make it. And we are just so extremely blessed and honored to have you, Danny. I mean, you and so many others are like the pillars of this coalition. And I'm just so humbled and honored to be able to, you know, walk alongside with you on this journey with the coalition. So I'd like to hear what your dreams are, and, you know, whether it's with or without the coalition, but it better be with.
You know, as you were talking, Gina, I feel like I'm seeing this convergence and its synergy of, and on one end, empowering and inspiring kids and young people to prevent human trafficking, and on the other end, empowering and inspiring survivors. And the convergence of that together, I think, is something that we're starting to see, and that I think is such a remedy for success and prevention in preventing this crime. I mean, it's, you know, I'm so overwhelmed by the enormity of this issue. And many times I feel so helpless. And I think, like, you know, seeing that kids empowered and survivors empowered, and both of their voices amplified, is just such an amazing way to approach, you know, this issue. So I was, as you were talking, I was like really seeing that and envisioning that. I think that's something that we could develop even more and talk about that more. But I mean, this issue has marked my life, and I just feel that preventing human trafficking and all forms of child exploitation is something that I will do to the day I die. I would say some personal goals for me. I mean, and now that I'm a dad, it's even more personal. But I'm writing my dissertation right now, and my dissertation is essentially chronicling the learning experience that the students, the learning experience of the students in Project Stay Gold, and the impact that their work had on their time in college, their career choices, and then how they're participating civically. And so to finish that is definitely an immediate goal. And I'm hoping to get that published. And I really want that, as you were saying, to be, you know, just a chronicling of just the amazing, absolutely amazing human beings that I had the privilege of teaching and working with. And it's just incredible to see what they're doing now, and how that work has impacted what they're doing. So that's called action inspired learning. So that's something I'm working on now. You know, I'm not really sure where the future is going to bring, but I do know that I just want to be an inspiration to kids, educators, and I want to empower individuals to do great things. So whatever that looks like, you know, it'll look like. But you know, at the end of the day, I want to continue this work in every way that I possibly can. I also want to find out how to awaken more people to this reality. A buddy of mine texted me on Monday, and he said he was reading about an arrest that happened, and he said to me, how come society is not more outraged by this? So I wrote him back and I said, that is the $1 million question. I said, this is something that we're constantly wrestling with and trying to figure out how can we get more of the public, you know, awakened to the reality of what is facing so many of our youth, young people, men and women alike. So I would say that's part of it, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Danny. You are just such an inspiration, and I just can hear you go on and talking, and all you do and all you give. I think when we think of terms of, you know, what can we do and how come this isn't being talked about more than it should be? Because you know what? The truth is that if we don't reach all the children, the traffickers will reach them. And that's not what we want. We need to fight for continued education. I loved what we all had a part in with the Department of Education, and I'm looking forward to seeing the work come out soon.
Yeah.
But I also feel there's always room to do more. Sure. We need to do more. We need to step it up. We really do. And I feel that by bringing the kids in, we need to bring the kids in, because no matter what it is they have to say, their voices are important and their voices need to be heard. And there's a place for them at our table, you know, there really is. And I think we can I think you will be and continue to be an intricate part of this by bringing the kids to the table. Yeah. You know, I'm excited about it too. And yeah, so.
Well, this was awesome, Gina. Thank you so much for this conversation. You made a few points here that I'm going to really reflect on and ponder on, and I think will really influence some of the arguments that I can make in favor of students moving forward in this very challenging time. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Danny. And if you need anything moving forward, you know, as far as talking with teachers or students or just yourself, I mean, whatever I can do. I mean, I could only speak from my lived experience as far as, you know, unhealthy connections or no connections, whether it be in school. Plus, in addition, I had challenges of having some learning disabilities, which, you know, made it more challenging. So I think, you know, I definitely can tell you point on what the problem is on both ends and what I experienced and where it led me. Yeah. And I do believe, I've been asked this many times, you know, if I had a different foundation, or if things were done differently, or if I had a voice, or if I felt empowered, if I felt I had a purpose, if I felt I belonged, if I didn't live with shame, if I didn't live with fear, would there have been a different outcome? And there is, without any doubt, without any uncertainty, my story would have had a different ending at that time. I mean, so it's definitely going to have a different ending now, but I mean, I would not have gone through what I went through. So I think that, you know, we're on the right track here, and I'm just so thankful for you and Kate and everyone from the coalition for all you do and your passion and your commitment to want to make change and be there for survivors and, you know, bring awareness and education. And I think all we need to do is just continue. We have a lot of work to do.
That's right, we do. I agree 100%.
Thank you, Danny.
Well, thank you, Gina. This was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
Gina, I have to tell you, this has been incredible, an incredible conversation to listen to. You are both so amazingly inspiring. I can't thank you enough. If you've been looking at the chat, you'll see all of these comments about how much you've inspired people tonight. So I just want to say thank you to you both. I want to say thank you to everybody that's here and has been listening. We will be recording this, and so, or we have been recording it, so we'll share it around. But thank you so much to everyone. And I just wish you all a very wonderful and good night. Thanks, everyone.